so this is February 9th, 2022. We'll, oh, there's Chris. Nice.
Hi, my camera's a bit knackered because I've got my settings set up for Calico Live, so I'm going to have to drop off and reconnect. I'll be right back.
I'll get us going with some general updates and stuff like usual. So yeah, 3.22, we released that. I came out on the 28th of January. It was a relatively small release just because of holidays, and also because a lot of engineering work went into this repo restructuring, which is pretty exciting now that that's closed off. I think we demoed that last time. But there were some nice improvements there. So one of them, Pedro is going to demo here a little bit later on, which is the ability to convert Kubernetes network policies to Calico policies. We can talk more about that later. Like I said, this was the first minor release from the new mono repo, so it's very exciting. Artifacts are now all attached to the Calico releases page rather than the individual micro repo releases. So if you're looking for things like Calico Cuddle, that's going to be on github.com project Calico Calico, not github.com project Calico Calico Cuddle. Same for CNI plugin binaries, and I think that's really it. Most of the other repos didn't have artifacts attached to them. Other cool things that came in, we had a couple contributions, one that both that I'm pretty excited about, but one that I had been seeing asked for quite a while, which was a way to auto-detect the IP address used by Calico Node based on the Kubernetes Node API, which I think is great and is probably what most people want, honestly. So I think we should probably start looking at making that the default auto-detection method at some point. I don't really know what that switch would look like. We might not be able to do it in the code, but we might be able to do it in the operator. But more thinking to come on that. And then the other one was dual stack support when using the host local IPAM plugin, which was another important one, especially for people using Canal or just using host local IPAM with Calico. So I think those are the main ones I wanted to in there as well. I'll throw release notes in the chat overall. If I can find it now that you're sharing your screen. Release notes are where they usually are. So one of the things that maybe we talked about VPP next, because that was real close for beta. I think, I didn't quite make it for 3.22.0, but on the plus side, I feel like there's a lot of great progress in the time leading up to it. We found some important issues. Sean got that code review out, so we've got a pretty good idea of some of the gaps for GA. So yeah, kind of a bummer that it wasn't in 3.22.0 as beta, but overall feeling pretty happy with some of the progress that sort of pushed us towards. Nathan, I don't know if you want to say more on VPP.
Sure. So yeah, we're still struggling with a few bugs. Thanks again for the code review and digging through all the code that we wrote to do this integration. we managed to get around most of the issues. There is still a small one lurking around, but we should be closing the gap. So so basically, to give a bit of context, there were inconsistencies in small race conditions at the edges when adding sessions and playing with our own kube proxy implementation. So we went through that, hardened that. And, hopefully, we should reach a state where it's stable enough to not hammer down the CI at every run. So we should be in better shape now. So
great. Yeah. Yeah, I think like I said, I'm happy to see it progressing again. And even if it didn't get beta in 3.22.0, we can look at that doing that in a patch release or 3.23 for sure.
Do we have testing using BPP right now? Or
we've got a whole slew of end-to-ends that Lance knows most about. I think most platforms are covered with the exception of OpenShift maybe and Rancher, which I don't think we have docs for yet, but that's part of the GA step. So yes.
Cool.
And I think it was those tests that we're really trying to nail down green status on at the moment.
End-to-ends and Cyclonus also.
Yeah. What else? I had a couple patch releases just go out, 3.20.4 and 3.19.4. I'm thankful that they're both .4 because it makes it easy to remember. They both had a bunch of base image updates just to fix some false positive CVEs. I mean, they were CVEs that Calico was unaffected by, but it did clear out those CVEs pulled in from the UBI base image so that scanners won't pop up with a bunch of scary looking alerts.
What was that? What releases is that with?
3.20.4 and 3.19.4. And we had already updated the base image, I think, or I don't think we were seeing those CVEs in 3.21 or 3.22.
Okay. Wait, what about 3.21? Was it already updated? Or?
Yeah, it was. So we didn't do a new release for 3.21 because we weren't seeing those CVEs show up in the 3.21 images.
Okay, cool.
For 3.23, date and final scope are still TBD, but we are starting to think about that, and we've got a decent scope already sort of figured out. So one of the big things we want to start looking into tackling is IPv6 support for some of our NCAP modes. So specifically VXLAN is one that we hear a lot, and WireGuard as well. So that would be real great to close out that that feature gap between IPv4 and IPv6 clusters. There's also a whole bunch of kind of Kubernetes driven things that we need to do. There are some API deprecations. So I think flex volumes, pod disruption budgets, endpoint slices are all things that we use at various places in Calico, and they all are in some varying state of deprecation. Endpoint slices aren't deprecated, but we use the V1 beta API, and the V1 API has been out for a bit. So gonna look at updating all of those. And then there's also some cool new work coming to the forefront in the upstream network policy space. So there's a couple KEPs that have been merged for alpha admin network policy, which is sort of an equivalent to Calico's global network policy, but different. Some different semantic differences and a little bit of other differences as well. Obviously syntax as well. So yeah, we need to start looking into how Calico implements that. And then also status reporting for network policy is one that's been merged, which I think we need to think about what sort of thing we can do there and provide some feedback on both of them.
As it stands today, is admin network policy a superset or a subset of global network policies, or is it not as simple as that?
It's not as simple as that.
Why did I think you'd say that?
Yeah, it's got some things that global network policy doesn't have, and it's missing a bunch of things that global network policy does have. As an example, well, and then it's also just got things that are different that aren't really missing versus not. So one of the key differences is the default deny on selection behavior, where admin network policy, when you select a pod with it, won't put that pod into a default deny state. It won't impact traffic at all if there are no rules. Global network policy works just like regular network policy, which is that when you select a pod, it is no longer allowed to send or receive traffic depending on the type of policy. And then you need to explicitly allow or deny stuff with rules. So that's one of the main differences.
Right.
There's also some quirks around ordering that we'll need to figure out. So like all the admin network policies come before normal Kubernetes policies, unless it has order 0, in which case it comes after Kubernetes network policies. So little quirks like that, which shouldn't be too crazy to implement, but we just need to work through how we want to do that. Gets a little more complicated when it's not just admin network policy and network policy, but there's also Calico network policy and Calico global network policy that we need to think about. So it's 4 different APIs that need to play nice together. And then for status, it's really just what sort of states can we reasonably present back to the user about a policy. I think the intention of the KEP is to alert users about unsupported fields, like say we didn't support named ports and we got a network policy that had a named port in it. We could spot that, put a status on the policy saying, hey, we don't support this, it's not implemented. But right now, I think we implement all of the APIs, so it's not much to put there.
So supporting status will be easy then. You just return
exactly.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe handle some edge case stuff, like if for some reason we get an error parsing the policy, but that's really only a, hey, there's a bug in the validation in the Kubernetes API, or there's a bug in our code, in our interpretation of it. Where was I? Yeah, I think for 323, the other like big area that we're looking at, there's a couple Bgp improvements that we want to look at. So around, specifically around node mesh, which is the default BGP mode. There's a couple features that currently don't work with that. BGP password and the Graceful Restart configuration option. So looking at adding that to node mesh as well. And like I said, this is all sort of tentative scope at the moment. Things may come, things may go, but those are the big ones.
Could you Graceful Restart?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't Node Mesh already do that?
It already does Graceful Restart, but we added an option a while back to allow configuration of the Graceful Restart, like hold timer, I guess. Maybe it's not the hold timer, but like the max length that a Graceful Restart will wait before abandoning the Graceful Restart and just starting up no matter what. I forget what we named the field, to be honest, but there's a field on BGP peer that lets you do that, but you can't do it if you're using node mesh because you're not actually configuring BGP peers to do that.
Gotcha.
Part of this is that you could re-implement the mesh using BGP peers, which is, I guess, what we expected people to do if they wanted to use these capabilities. And that, I mean, that works fine. You could do that. You could set a password and a Graceful Restart timer, but there are some nuances. So part of what we want to do in this release as well is remove some of those maybe unexpected behavioral differences if you implement a mesh with a BGP peer versus if you implement a mesh with like the default node mesh setting. And then longer term, like BGP node mesh, what is it good for? Should we just be re-implementing this entirely with Felix rather than relying on BGP to distribute those routes? That's another one that's not going to be in 3.23, but is stewing in the background. Eric, did you want to say anything about operator stuff?
Sure, I can say a little bit, not too much. As far as operator direct updates, like, I mean, there were certainly some updates with 3.22, like around dual stacks, host local. There's operator changes there. I guess there was. I say I guess. I believe I'm fairly confident that we had the associated changes for the IP auto detection that was done. There were some small. I just went through the PRs that had been merged relatively recently, and there's one for making sure that Calico node doesn't run on AWS Fargate nodes. I forget why. I think they're not actually like nodes and don't support like host networking or stuff that is necessary. So there's some defaulting or setting those to make sure it won't run there. There was a status bug that was fixed, but I couldn't remember, Casey. Casey, you had added something to not, so that we wouldn't delete status, just keep deleting status. We would kind of keep track in the status if it had been deleted. And I couldn't remember if that had been released yet or not, so I don't know if you were fixing a bug that was released or fixing a bug that was just in master. So
yeah, I think I was just fixing a bug that I introduced in master and hadn't been released.
Okay, so that's good. All right, so then the thing that was released was status doesn't keep deleting if it needs to delete something.
Casey introduces bug and then fixes it.
You added a feature though. That was. We'll go with that. There was another small one that I think is in the latest release, but there was IP tables backend, like the Felix environment variable supports auto, but the Felix data store configuration doesn't support auto. So there was a migration issue that if you had that set as an environment variable, it would block the migration. So the fix was to ignore if that is set to auto, because it being unset is auto. So
Yeah.
so that little fix went in.
On that point, do we have any thoughts or plans about how we could migrate Felix configuration better? I think we've seen this a couple times now where users will set, I mean, Felix configuration has probably 50 or more fields in it that
I mean,
can
you're
be
talking
set.
about migrating environment variables, right?
That's right, yeah.
Well, I mean, right now, what it does is it kind of like it takes the environment variable, converts it into like the proper field that would be in Felix configuration and loads it that way.
So it does write the Felix configuration.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just this specific, like the IP tables backend, the environment variable supports auto as a string, but that doesn't work in the data store. So this one needed a specific. And actually, I saw something that I think Lawrence asked me about, or for what is it? The host, what is it? Failsafe ports. The environment variable supports none, but that doesn't work in the data store. So yeah, there's things like that we don't have. We don't have all those differences handled right now where they exist. I'm not sure how many of those we have, but there's 2 examples, so I don't know how many more there are.
Yeah, I would bet that it's not just 2.
Yeah. The auto one was, it's pretty easy to resolve because it's just, okay, you see it, it's auto, you just don't do anything with it. But like the one with the host port, the failsafe ports, is a little different because none means empty, and I'm not actually confident if setting that like to an empty slice will just cause it to be then detected as unset nil. I don't know if that empty slice is going to get dropped because of omit empty. Omit empty may not be set on it. So
yeah, we need to look at whether or not the API supports a way of specifying none, which it must, right? We wouldn't have done something so silly as to not allow that.
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I agree there. It would be good to review those thoroughly.
Yeah, I think that answers my question though. I was wondering if we actually did that conversion between environment variables to API, and it looks like we do
that auto magically based on the type of what it's expected to be. We will take and convert, for like the I think the failsafe ones, they're supposed to be like what, port or proto and port, I think, or something like that. And so, it looks at what type the Felix configuration data store object would be, and will convert the environment variable based on that type. So yeah, we try. That was all I had for operator.
Cool. Any other updates before we move on to issues and demos and all that fun stuff? Going once, going twice. Cool.
I should stop sharing, right?
Yeah, stop sharing. I will share my screen. There are only just a handful of issues this time around, so hopefully we can go through this pretty quickly. I just want to scan these and try to give them a quick triage. I think we've got 5, and a couple of them are pretty related. Problems in Calico node cannot reach another node's pod in VXLAN mode. Because the destination of the route isn't, I don't know how to parse that. Oh, I see. So it looks like the issue is that the VXLAN IP is, the VXLAN tunnel address is borrowed, and we're not handling that properly. I can imagine that that might not work. I think I need to look deeper into this one, but it might be a bug. Syncing Calico node labels cannot be disabled. Why would you want to do that? So we do have a field for that to control whether or not you sync labels from Kubernetes API nodes to Calico API nodes. Regardless of the value, nodes are always synced to Calico node objects. Oh, I have an idea of what this might be. I think that they're using CRDs, and our API is not super clear that when you're using CRDs, this field does nothing, because we don't actually use a controller to copy labels across. The node object is just one-to-one translated. Kube controllers config show status sync labels disabled even if sync labels is enabled. I think this is probably the same sort of root cause as the other one. It's by the same guy. Yeah. This is definitely part of the whole issue with our CRDs at the moment. I'll respond to this one as well, because the only way to create stuff before Calico's running is with the CRD v1 API, but we don't support that because it's not validated or defaulted or anything, so it's a big foot gun. And the last one, provide minimal RBAC needed for Tigera operator and Helm chart. Eric, I see you nodding.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of permissions.
Yeah, I think we've got another one about this as well. See if we can, yeah, this one.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody about some of this the other day, and I mean, some of it we can't, like I don't know how we can get away from the service account, like being able to create service accounts and stuff. And I don't think that's something you can't. I mean, I guess what we can do is we can like define all the names of the service accounts we need. I guess that's that's probably the most we can do for that. And we can, well, let's see. Like I don't know. I guess we can. I mean, we can add permission. Like I don't know. We can get away from like having global secret access and stuff like that. We can either put like cluster roles and bindings for all the service accounts that we'll create.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, you can't. You could. Well, let's see. Yeah, you can create. Well, no, you can create cluster roles. Can you create just roles? You can't just create roles if the namespace doesn't exist, can you?
Not that I'm aware of, although I was skimming that issue earlier and it looked like he had some namespaced roles that he was creating by hand, at least for the operator. So I think there's some trial and error we need to do about the best way to kind of minimize that RBAC, but we should do that.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how much we can trim it back without like stop like the unless we're gonna stop the operator from creating the namespace that like already expect them to be pre-created for the purpose of like creating cluster roles. I'm not sure how. I mean, it can look. We can maybe make it look like we're reducing our permissions, but really, it would still be. You could basically do anything if you create a new cluster role and cluster role binding. If you can do that, then you can kind of do anything, right?
Yeah,
Like
I don't know enough about the boundaries that are put on that, but I think, yeah, that is a scary one to put in. Maybe we could include all of the cluster roles and bindings in, pull them out of the operator and have them created in the manifest so that only the admin that's installing it creates those.
Well, I'm not sure if that, like a cluster role can't be targeted for specific namespaces, right? I don't think that's.
It targets service account in a namespace, so that it would require, you can create it even though the service account doesn't exist, and then once the service account exists, it'll be bound to it, I think.
Right, but we can't give the operator a cluster role that says you can only look at secrets in these you can only mess with secrets in these namespaces.
I seem to recall that you can do that, although I don't think it's a very common, at least the manifest I've looked at, a very common part of the RBAC API that's used.
Okay.
But I think that there is a way to limit to specific namespaces.
Okay.
To double check that.
That would be, yeah, because I thought it was that the only way you could do that was with roles, which I believe the namespace has to exist to create a role in a namespace. And because that's the only way I thought we could have the operator only have access to certain namespaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, need some trial and error.
Yep.
I think we just need to dive in and see what we can do, iterate on it a couple times, and then, but clearly there's scope for reducing permissions.
Yeah.
Why don't we switch over to Pedro and do a little demo?
All right, let me share my screen. Everything. Do you guys see my screen?
We do indeed.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So basically, yeah, this was a request on GitHub to have a tool way to convert the Kubernetes network policy to Calico network policy. The way we went about it was there already was a Calico convert subcommand, which was used for converting Calico v1 to Calico v3. We just extended that to also convert Kubernetes network policies to Calico v3 network policies. Let me show it working. To do this, I just follow the Kubernetes policy tutorial on the Calico docs. And what happens is we have an Nginx with two, hang on, sorry. Yeah, an Nginx server, and we have two network policies, default deny policy, and one that allows a pod with access to run it. So right now we have the Kubernetes policies. Let me just show you. Hang on. Let me show you this success case. So let's just run. And so this pod should be able to get everything, and it does. And now let's show the failure, which should time out. 5 seconds. And so we see the two Kubernetes network policies here, right? So let's write this too. And now let's run Calico convert show YAML. Should have let's convert that to somewhere in the same. Let's open those files. So basically we see here side by side the converted Calico policy. It does, like, the policy demo does the same thing, like allowing a pod with a run access to access the pod with app or service with app Nginx, right? And the default deny. That's same thing, right? So let's now apply we did apply those two network policies. So let's now delete the Kubernetes policies. And let's rerun the test and show that that happened. So let's see the pod that should not be able to access. We're expecting a timeout. And we do. And success case. Let me just get this thing here. And success. And so I didn't rehearse this part. this is not how we get. I just wanted
It's
to show.
namespaced, so it won't show up unless you pass the.
Oh, right,
namespace
that's
there.
right. Thanks, Casey. So yeah, these are the only policies running, right? Let me do. The shine. We don't have any Kubernetes network policy in place, just Calico. But yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know if anyone has any questions or.
I don't have any questions, but I was just going to add some of the context around this. Like, I think this is something folks might want to use if they have, gotten started with Kubernetes policy, implemented a bunch of policies, and then realized there's some feature that they need in a Calico policy. Say they need to be able to change the order or they want to deny rule in their policy. They can either, whole hog, get all the policies, convert them to Calico policies, or they can, convert a specific one just to take advantage of that extra feature. And I think this is using the same like conversion logic that Felix uses internally.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Yeah. So like you'll get the exact same behavior from the pre-conversion policy and the converted policy. Because logically what Felix is seeing is the output of this conversion already.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, if you don't see the same thing, then that means Felix has a bug then, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'm happy we got to do that. And thanks for showing it up, Pedro.
Yeah, sure, no
And
problem.
for
Yeah,
doing
thanks,
it.
guys.
Yeah. My only question is around your Vim setup. So I'll talk to you later.
All right. Yeah. Slack me.
Yeah, I was actually curious about that too.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Any other items people wanted to talk about or questions or anything at all? If not, then I'll say thanks for coming, everybody. And we will meet again in a month on March 9th as well. Cool.
Yeah, that's a cool February thing.
See you guys.